Welcome to the Joy of Cruising podcast with your host, award-winning author Paul C. Thornton, a weekly conversation with the amazing cruisers featured in the Joy of Cruising books, comprised of The Joy of Cruising, Cruising Interrupted, new release, The Joy of Cruising Again, as well as other fun, informative global cruise personalities. It's the next best thing to cruising, hearing about cruising from the unique and diverse perspectives of Paul's amazing guests. If you hear about a cruise that interests you, book it at www.thejoyoфvacation.com or enter to win a free cruise for two. Again, www.thejoyoфvacation.com. We really appreciate your feedback, so leave us a text. Paul can't reply, but he may read your text on the air.
Hello, passionate cruisers. This is Paul. This week on the Joy of Cruising podcast, I am proud to welcome Josh Christina, recording artist, scene-stealing, piano-wielding frontman, and veteran headliner of several cruise lines. Listeners know I am as passionate about music and comedy as I am about cruising. So when I get a chance to have a conversation with someone who has performed on cruise ships, I am in my glory. Josh Christina is a dynamic and passionate musician whose love for piano rock has taken him on an incredible journey. His musical story began at the age of 7, inspired by the iconic sounds of Elvis Presley in Disney's Lilo and Stitch. It wasn't until age 15, after seeing the Broadway show $1 Million Quartet and discovering the electrifying Jerry Lee Lewis, that Josh began playing piano, igniting his path as a pianist and performer. Josh's talents caught the attention of Grammy-nominated producer Kent Wells, who has worked with legends like Dolly Parton and Reba McEntire. Kent describes Josh as such an old soul, praising the way the music just pours out of him. This connection led to Josh recording in Nashville, creating music that resonates with the soul of classic rock and boogie woogie. His single, Kayla Ann, topped several independent radio charts, and Josh's album, Instincts, recorded at the historic Sam Phillips recording studio in Memphis, was a testament to his mastery. Produced by Josh and Grammy-winning pianist John Carroll, Instincts received high praise, with John calling Josh a performer who does it real well and means every note. Josh's high-energy performances have taken him across the globe, including a UK tour where he graced the stage of Ireland's Late Late Show. He's headlined major cruise lines, bringing his piano rock show to fans of all ages worldwide. He's also shared the stage with some of the world's top boogie woogie and rock and roll pianists, earning admiration from both peers and fans for keeping the genre alive. His latest album, UFOs Over Phoenix, recorded live at Stages Music and Arts in Maryland, has already captured attention for its unique sound. Dal Davis, former bandleader and pianist for Chuck Berry, describes the album as striking the perfect balance of a scent of the familiar while being creatively and refreshingly new. Josh's infectious energy, undeniable talent, and deep respect for rock and roll history have earned him a dedicated following. His music is a celebration of the past, present, and future of piano rock. Welcome, Josh, to the Joy of Cruising podcast.
Hey, how you doing? Good to be here.
How are you doing?
I can't complain. Staying busy.
Good. Busy is good.
Yes.
Before we talk about your career and performing on the ocean, tell our listeners about yourself, where you're from, where you live, your background growing up, and then as an adult, whatever you would like to share.
Sure. I've been born and raised in Baltimore, Maryland, just north of the Baltimore City in the U.S. I've been here my whole life. I've been doing music professionally for the last about 12 years. I got into music really young. I heard Elvis, and I heard Jerry Lee Lewis, I heard Chuck Berry, and got into songwriting and singing and playing piano. And I've been very blessed. I've been able to go all over the world and record Nashville and Memphis, and even here in Baltimore, and play on international television and over in Ireland. And in the last, few years, I've been a headline on cruise ships, which has been a blast to, get to see other parts of the world and, play on his big showroom. So it's a good career. I love what I do.
Somewhere in there was the sea, and my listeners, as you know, are very much interested in that life. So, talk about the path that led you to cruise ships and its role in becoming, who Josh Christina is today.
Sure. Probably actually prior to COVID. I'll say probably like New Year's Eve 2019 going into 2020. I did a show, New Year's Eve show, and I had a drummer buddy of mine fill in for me. My regular drummer had family commitments or something, and he had been a drummer on cruise ships for many years. All through the '90s, he worked on Carnival and Royal and Holland, and he has drummed with some big people like Ann Margaret and Cab Calloway. And so anyway, so we did the show, and in the show, we're loading out of the theater, and he goes, hey man, he goes, you'd be great, working ships. And I said, I said that'd be a dream. I said, but from what I hear, you got to be on the ship for many months at a time. And he goes, oh no, he goes, you'd be great as like a headliner on cruise ships and come on for sometimes 5 days to a week to 2 weeks, whatever, and play a few shows and get to enjoy the ship and get to travel. And that really interested me. So I looked into it and started putting all this stuff together. And then the pandemic hit and the whole world shut down. The cruising industry froze. So it all sat on my shelf for a few years. And then in about 2022, I got back into it and got everything back together. I got my charts made for my shows and all my promo material, and I sent it out. And I landed a great agency, Blackbird International, out of the UK, that books for like 15 or 16 different cruise lines, and that's really where it started. And I've been doing ships, like I said, for a little over 2 years now.
Now, Josh, let me back you up to that cruise you were on with that drummer, and you might have said it, but I missed it. What cruise line was that?
Well, that was a gig on land, but he had worked for many cruise lines. He had worked for Carnival and Royal, so he saw me play on land.
Okay.
And he goes, "You'd be great. You would be great working ships."
Okay.
And so he kind of set the spark that made me really check it out.
Okay. By any chance, was his name Manny?
No, his name was Larry Ruckman.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah.
I've done a podcast with a drummer. He was a drummer. He led a jazz ensemble on Royal Caribbean.
Okay.
And his name is Manny, and he has a long career. He played with Ray Charles. He played with Quincy, Billy Preston,
Sure.
Graham Central Station.
Yeah.
In fact, one of their signature songs, you'll hear, a Manny playing a solo, and that's him. And so when you said a drummer who had played on cruise ships, I'm thinking, wow, this, let me see if this is as small a world as I thought.
Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if Larry doesn't know him, because my buddy Larry, like I said, he was on Royal and Carnival and Holland. I mean, he worked through them, all through the '90s, and even up until, I think he still goes out every now and then for a few months here or there. So he probably knows him.
You said several cruise lines. Can you name some? Talk about the highlights of performing on the ocean.
Sure. I do most of my work. I do is for Celebrity and Viking. I've worked for MSC. I work with Princess. The thing I love about it is I get to meet people from all over the world, and get to perform in front of them from everywhere. I mean, when I worked on MSC, I had people there from Germany and Italy and France and the UK and Japan and Canada, the US, Mexico. So it's really cool for me because you can travel the world and play countries or different parts of the world, but when you play a cruise ship, you almost bring the world to you. So I love that part of it, because I get to be there with all these people that may have not heard of me or seen me, except they're on that cruise and they get to see me in the theater that night. So I really love that part of it. I love meeting the people. We meet so many fascinating people, on these cruise ships, people that, have, just had crazy careers, and people that cruise, like 200, 300 days or more out of the year sometimes. I mean, just you meet these amazing people. So for me, I love it. I mean, of course, I love performing and being on stage and playing and singing, but I love the people connection of it and just the vast, types of people you get to meet on these ships.
Yeah, I know what you mean about meeting, such unique people on ships. That really is the essence of this podcast, because there's so many
Sure.
people out there with unique stories,
Yeah.
either cruisers or performers, CEO, whatever, some
Yeah.
connection with the sea, but they have a story that I'd like the cruising community to hear.
Sure.
What were some of the highlights? Oh, you did talk about meeting people, but other than that, the highlights as well as the challenges of performing at sea.
Yeah. I mean, like you said, the highlights, I was meeting people. Show wise, the highlights are, you get to meet so many great musicians. I mean, of course, it kind of goes back to, meeting different people, but, I work with bands from the Philippines, Indonesia, Mexico, the UK. I mean, these amazing backup bands in these theaters. When you're a headliner on a ship, you come on and you get there and they give you your schedule and you see you perform this night and this night. And so if you have a 7:30 and 9:30 show, you rehearse with the band at 3:30 or 3:30 or 4:30. So you go in there and you meet these people, give them your charts, you run through your show, and they just kill it every time. And they almost make you want to play up. You're like, man, I got to keep up with these guys. They're so good. They can and they play in that theater almost every night. They do the production shows. They got 2 or 3 headliners on there. They're backing up different charts, different shows, and they just kill it every night. I mean, that's such a cool part of it for me. And with that said, that would also be one of the challenges because when I first started doing cruises, I have a band at home that I've worked with for many years, and they can back me up on stage and read every little cue I give and everything I do, and it's like we're like glue. So when I first started doing ships, that was a new adjustment for me. Was
Hmm.
coming on there and just meeting these people right away and going off the charts and banging out the show and doing the show. Now I've gotten used to it and I really enjoy it. But that was a challenge at first. That adjustment, the adjustment to the travel. Sometimes here in Baltimore, and they'll have me go all the way to Hawaii, get on the ship, and go to Vancouver. So you got that long travel day, and then sometimes you get that long travel day. You get on the ship that day, and they have you playing the first night.
Oh,
So
wow.
you're traveling. You're not even in your room yet. I mean, so some of that sometimes is challenging, but I love doing it, so it kind of, that kind of offsets it. And once you go on the ship, it's like you're in, a floating city for however long you're there. So you get accustomed to it and being out there on the water. Uh, but yeah, but definitely sometimes, just that travel and, getting right to a show can be a little challenging. And again, when I first started, you know, that adjustment of not having my steady band was a little bit of a hill to climb. But, I'm a quick learner, so I got it down pretty quick.
I've had a couple of vocalists on the show, and both of them mentioned, and they were both women, and although they pointed out but they learned the hard way with wearing high heels. Both of them pointed out the motion of the
Mhm.
ship while they're singing. As a performer, like an instrumentalist, do you notice it much?
So you noticed it because I'm sitting on the piano for pretty much my whole show. I don't really notice it as much because I'm sitting and I'm playing like as Elton John would call it, a big plank. Um, so, but I mean, I have there's a few times on my show I get up and I'll talk to the crowd or walk the stage or whatever, and you'll feel it there. And I've seen performers on there, with high heels and these amazing female entertainers running the stage, the production cast, just people running the stage, people coming down, the acrobats. I mean, sometimes that ship's rocking and you feel for them. You're like, oh, that's got to be rough, up there. But I felt it, but it doesn't affect me as much as it probably affects, like you said, women in heels running around the stage, working the stage. I'm sure it's a little bit different for them.
Now, you're not just sitting at the piano, though. I've seen where you were playing and had one leg up on top of the piano and one leg, doing some Jerry Lee Lewis stuff.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah, yeah. All the I'll do that. I'll lay under. I'll play upside down. I'll do as much as they let me do. It's not my piano, so I do as much as I can do without abusing it.
Now, when you started performing on cruise ships,
Mhm.
had you been on a cruise?
So that's the funny part. I had never been on a cruise. I had never had a desire to go on a cruise. And my very first cruise contract was for MSC on the MSC Seascape. It was 18 days and it was like a 5,000 passenger boat. So I got like thrown right into the fire. And I was like, well, you know what? I'm going to love this. I'm going to hate this. And I fell in love with it right away. That was the best first ship to be on. They had a great jazz band I got to hang out with every night. They were all from Brazil and they were amazing. So we hung out every night in the jazz club. And there was a great comedian on there, a guy named A Train. Him and I got along great.
I've been on a cruise where A Train was the comedian.
Yeah, yeah. He's great, and so we became friends right away. And he was great because he's a veteran of working ships. It was my first ship, so he kind of showed me the ropes the first week I was there, and it was great. So I fell in love with it. But yeah, but prior to that, never been on a cruise, so it was like you'll see how this goes, and luckily it worked out really well.
Yeah, if you are in touch at all with A Train, tell him to answer my message. Tell him I'm the guy he met on the Maxwell cruise, and he'll remember because we talked about him being on the podcast.
All right. I will text him. I will let him.
I appreciate that. On that first cruise, I guess you had a lot of things on your mind because it was, you said, I think, an 18-day or something
Day.
cruise. And were you apprehensive at all about seasickness, or you just didn't have time to think about any of that?
Yeah, I never really gave it a thought. Motion sickness has never bothered me. Roller coasters, being on boats. I only got sick on a boat one time when I was younger, and I was with a bunch of people that all had motion sickness. So they were all getting sick and throwing up, and I think it got in my head. But prior to that one time in my life, motion sickness has never bothered me. And I never really gave it a thought. I was so into getting accustomed to cruising and getting accustomed to being on the boat and figuring out kind of this whole world, because if you've never cruised and if you've never especially even performed on a cruise ship, once you get out there it is like its own little world. It's a lot different than playing on land. So I think I was so focused on getting into that and getting my head in the game with that I never gave it a thought, and it's never bothered me. And that was a big ship, and we were in the Caribbean, so it didn't move that much. But I mean, I went on Viking to, LA to Hawaii. That's a smaller ship, and that Pacific Ocean is a lot rougher, and that's never bothered me either. Um, I don't even mind it. Sometimes I like going to sleep with it rocking a little bit. So yeah.
Do you get off at all the port stops? I mean, has the cruising life grown on you, or the cruising lifestyle grown on you?
Yeah, I get off at ports. I want to get off. I always get off in Hawaii, and I like to get off some islands in the Bahamas. I love Paradise Island, Nassau, St. John's. I've gotten off, and a few other places too. New Orleans. I went to New Orleans, got off there from Mardi Gras. But a lot of times, especially if it's ports I've been to, like when we're at port and everybody's out and the ship empties out, I love going up to the pool. I'll go to the gym, like it's quiet, kind of just relax. So I get off where I want, but I don't always. Sometimes I do, and I enjoy the ship so much. I get pretty content on there and have a good routine, you know, out there for a while.
Let's shift gears a little bit. Talk about who is Josh Christina, the recording artist.
Sure. Well, I got into writing music because I heard Chuck Berry, and all those Chuck Berry hits Chuck wrote by himself. I mean, they're all Chuck Berry, and that inspired me. Like, well, I want to be that guy. I want to be a guy that plays music and plays stuff that he has written and records stuff that is his words and his feelings. So, as a recording artist, I've gotten to record five albums. I've gotten to record two of them in Nashville. I got with a guy named Kent Wells, who produced and still does produces Dolly Parton. I've gotten to record in Memphis at St. Philip's Recording on a piano Jerry Lee Lewis played on. I've recorded here.
Oh, wow.
I've done a few singles with a few other producers in Nashville. So, that's all that stuff's on Spotify, of course. That's all my original stuff there. But I've gotten to do some really great stuff from being a songwriter and being a recording artist. I'm that part of it. When I do the ships and stuff, because people never seen you before, it's kind of, it's a lot of shock value if they walk in there and you play a whole bunch of cover songs, a whole bunch of original songs never heard. So my cruise ship show, I usually do a lot of, covers, piano, rock and roll covers, but I always stick, one or two of my own songs in there because as an artist, I want people to get exposed to what I do. And how I write and sing and play is very in that vein of, rock and roll, piano, rock and roll, Elton John, Jerry Lee. So it kind of well into a show when you're covering some of those guys, and it allows me to talk about myself too as an artist, which I like to do.
So when you perform live, what's the mix between covers and your own stuff?
Sure. It depends. On land, with my band, it's probably, I would say, 75, 75 cover, 25 original.
Uh-huh.
And that's because sometimes you're playing new venues people don't know, and you're trying, get them hooked a little bit. On cruise ship circuit, that's the other thing about working ships is those theater shows are only about 45 minutes, so they're not long. So I usually, it's probably, it's like 8 covers and maybe 1 or 2 originals, because they're in and they're out, and you got a second show. So it, it's a little different. On land, you do a 90-minute or a 2-hour theater show. You got more time. You got more time to get them hooked. Got more time to get, a new fan into what you're doing. But it does depend, but I like to always put at least a few in there.
On your albums, are they all originals or do you sprinkle some covers on those?
They're pretty much all originals. When I recorded in Memphis, we did a rock and roll medley. So at the very end of the record, and we literally just jammed on it. It was like a one take and done thing. We kept it real raw and rock. We did a medley of Johnny Be Good, Whole Lot of Shaking Going On, Long Tall Sally, and Hound Dog, I think. And I've covered a few other songwriters' songs, like friends of mine that have written. My buddy John Carroll, I've covered one of his songs. Him and I have co-wrote a song together. But with the exception of that, everything on all my original stuff is all stuff I've written. All the albums. There's not really too many covers on there.
Say something about artists you've performed with, or key events, or major venues. What have been some of the highlights of your career?
Yeah, I've gotten to play on Ireland's Late Late Show, which is their like equivalent to Jimmy Fallon. That was great. I did an original song on air because I had a song out that was doing well on radio over there for a little while over in Ireland and the UK in general. And then I did a warm up prior to the show being on air. So I came out with a rock and roll medley thing and did a bunch of Jerry Lee moves and the crowd went nuts. So that was. I've gotten to work with some amazing sidemen of the people I looked up to. It's funny. All the guys I look up to were either old and retired or gone long before I was even born. So, I never really got to meet Jerry Lee or meet Chuck Berry or Elvis or Little Richard or, Ray Charles or anything, B.B. King. But I've gotten to work with some people that work with him. And my buddy Daryl Davis, he played piano for Chuck Berry for 32 years. We've done shows together, dueling piano shows together. I've gotten to work with a guy named Kenny Lovelace. Kenny Lovelace played guitar and fiddle for Jerry for 53 years or something crazy. Played on all the records from 1967 until Jerry died. I mean, he was there. I got to work with him and, just meet some people that I've really gotten to work with, the idols I've looked up to and gotten to hear firsthand stories. And so that's really cool. Recording in Memphis was cool. On a piano Jerry Lee played and recorded on, and I got to meet the Phillips family. I know Sam Phillips' son and his granddaughter. And
oh, wow.
Yeah, I got, firsthand stories of that. So that's
excuse me for cutting you off, Josh. When I was researching you, someone referred to you as an old soul.
Yeah.
And the guys that you're mentioning are definitely not your generation.
No, no, they're not even really my parents' generation. When you think about it, they're before that.
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah.
Let's talk about the future. Any tours or events planned? My listeners would definitely be interested. Are there any plans to headline on a ship?
Yeah, coming up, I believe it's May 23rd. to June 10th. I'll be on the Celebrity Summit.
Oh, so that's soon. Okay.
Yeah, on that's Vancouver, Alaska, Hawaii, I think LA. I'm on there for like the back half of one cruise and the first half of the other or something. And July, end of July, I'll be on the Viking Neptune up in Nova Scotia in Iceland, doing a run up through there. It's like the last week of July, or like the first week of August. I got some land gigs, some land theater gigs in my band on land, of course, and I've been doing some gigs on American cruise lines. A bunch of the riverboat cruises. There's a lot of them that come up through Baltimore and go through DC and Annapolis, Cambridge, St. Michael's, up the bay. Been doing shows on there as well. So yeah, so keep myself busy.
Are you a traveler in general? Besides cruising to work, do you travel, land travel or cruising for leisure, for pleasure?
Yeah, I have. It's funny. I used to do every year in May. I used to go to the Bahamas for a week, and that was always fun at the Atlantis down there. I've gone to Nashville, obviously to record, but also to hang out and see the music, and I have friends down there I'll go see. But in the last few years, because I've been doing the ships, I really haven't traveled because I've been traveling, and even though I'm working on the ships, I'll be on a ship sometimes 7 days, and I work 2 nights. So I get plenty of vacation time, in between. So kind of works out. But I do enjoy traveling. Like, I'm going to Nashville for a wedding soon, so I'll be traveling there for fun, for fun, seeing my friend get married. So, but doing the ships, so much and stuff, it kind of takes care of the travel, so to speak.
Did you have any other ships that you have lined up in the future? I know you talked about Celebrity Summit.
Celebrity Summit, Viking Neptune. Right now, nothing yet in the fall, but it always will come in, usually in June for me. Last year, I was on the Celebrity Eclipse in October, and I did the Viking Neptune back to back right over right in December. So I'll probably get something like that coming in the fall again, usually. But right now,
Yeah, I was going to ask you how'd you like not how'd you like it. I was going to ask you, are you excited about going on Viking? But you've been on it before.
yeah, I've worked Viking several times. Actually, the same ship. I keep landing on different routes, but I keep getting on the Viking Neptune. Yeah. I love Viking. I mean, the ships are gorgeous and it's a little smaller. Great.
Certainly more luxurious.
Yeah, definitely more luxurious. The food is great. Yeah, I really enjoy. I enjoy Viking. I love Celebrity too. I got to do the Celebrity Descent just in January, and that was my first time on that ship. Like LED screens in the theater, and that was a fantastic night. So
Yeah, that was one of my recent cruises, late 2024.
yeah.
Hey, I forgot to ask you, but when you were talking about your recordings, I assume listeners can get those at Apple Music and
Yeah,
Spotify.
yeah. All my original stuff you can get on Spotify, Apple Music, YouTube Music, Amazon, and you can even buy it on CD or vinyl off my website too.
Okay, you said I think there were five. Just give us the names real quick,
Sure, yeah.
and I can even put those in the show notes. We'll
Okay.
see if we can get you some downloads.
Yeah. I'll go in order. I did my first Nashville record. That was Good Old Love. Then there was I'm 21. Then there was Instincts. That was in Memphis. And then there was like over COVID, like 3 or 4 singles. One called Old Piano. One called Rockstar. One called Weekend Night in America. And then my most recent record, UFOs Over Phoenix, I recorded right here in Baltimore. And actually, you can get that. The other ones you can stream, and I think there's some CDs left of those. But the newest one you can stream too would also get on vinyl record. So
Great. Josh, I know that you're very busy, and we appreciate you coming on. Before we let you go, a couple of fun or light cruise questions, or just not necessarily cruise questions, but mostly cruise questions. This first question: how do you spend your me time?
on the ship when I'm
No,
down,
just in general.
I love a good night in and like cook a nice big steak dinner and pour a glass of bourbon and just put a record on and chill out. I love that.
That sounds like perfection to me.
Yeah, it works out well. And if I'm not doing that, I know I have a piano in my living room. I love going up there and sitting and always playing stuff. I'm always thinking new songs and working out new licks and things. So it's never really, playing's never been work for me. So that's me time is probably one of those two things. So
What about listening to music? Do you listen to any other genres other than what you play in, or are you
yeah,
strictly into what your style of music?
yeah. I listen to a lot of stuff in my style of music, but there's always artists that catch my ear that I really like. There's a great group called Lake Street Dive. This is fantastic. They're kind of a newer group in the last 15 years. They're great. Um, I think Adele's great. I think her piano work on her record is fantastic. I love listening to that. Um,
Mm-hmm.
some of the country stuff I like Chris Stapleton, and in the pop R&B world I like Bruno Mars, and there's a few, but
Okay.
but a lot of times I'm always listening to artists I like. I'm always discovering new stuff about artists I like some 80s stuff too. I like Steve Ray Vaughan, I like Huey Lewis and the News. Mm. It's like pretty wide catalog.
Getting back to cruising, what's your favorite cruise drink and cruise food?
All right. Well, cruise drink on some of the celebrity ships, some of the older ones, but a lot of the newer ones, they have a bar called the World Class Bar.
Mm-hmm.
They can make all kinds of stuff. And there's a drink I like that's called a penicillin. It's a Scotch drink. It's got lemon, honey, and ginger syrup in it, and you use you know, like a regular Scotch, like a Johnny Walker Black or a Highland Park or something, and you shake it and you put it over a big rock, and then they take a really smoky Scotch, like a Lafroig or an Ardbeg or whatever they have, and they'll float it on top. And usually the world class bar is like the only bar on any of the ships that can make it because they have all the ingredients because they make all those luxury cocktails. So
Yep.
I always get that when I'm there. Food wise, I like for some reason when I'm at sea, I like eating fish. I love a good fish. And Viking, they have a pool grill and they have a great salmon steak they have all day. And I usually I have that for lunch, 5 out of the 7 days or whatever I'm on there. So, that's always good.
Okay. What's your most memorable or wonderful or funniest or even most embarrassing cruise or port experience?
Mm. Well, I'll tell you, one of the most memorable probably was back in January of this year when I did the ascent. Because it was my first time, doing a ship with that type of theater where they had the LED wall and I had to get an LED basically graphics made for all my songs and my shows. And there's a great guy named Travis Clower, fantastic singer out of Vegas, but he does that stuff on the side. And so he made the graphics for me, and I'll never forget walking out on stage and doing Great Balls of Fire, and you got these fiery keys wrapped around you on this big wall, and they got the lights in color with the keys and that. So
Wow.
that was really cool because I've been doing ships a few years, so that was my first time on that class of ship. So where I had that that such high tech theater. So I love that. And probably too. I mean, probably in general, just my first time being on a ship was always memorable to me. It was that ship's always that was my first one, so that was always cool walking out there and on that stage in that room and just the ship in general. But the that Celebrity Ascent Theater, that'll be in my mind forever. That was one of those great moments for me.
That did it for you, state of the art. Now the guy who put that together, is that someone you know on land, or he works for Celebrity?
No, he works for he does a lot of headlining shows and Celebrity.
Oh, okay, okay.
Vegas. He's a great singer. He played like Frankie Valli and Jersey Boys and Broadway for the longest running span of ever. He sings fantastic. Does a lot of Frankie Valli, Bee Gees stuff, and but his business on the side, besides performing shows, is he does like the tech stuff. He could
Okay.
up and because he knew the file size and everything. We met on a ship, and it was not long before not long after I got booked for that, ascent contract. So in conversation, he goes, I can make graphics up, and it worked out great because he did them. They were perfect. They were clear. They were great. They fit the screen well. It was fantastic.
Great. Let's see. The last question, I call this an oddball question. Oddball only in that it doesn't have anything necessarily to do with cruising. So first of all, welcome to Josh's friends and fans listening, so that your friends and fans can get to know you just a tiny bit better. Josh, share one thing that my listeners and your friends and fans don't know about Josh.
Don't know about me. Well, despite loving to perform and be on stage in front of people, I'm actually a pretty shy, leave me alone kind of guy most of the time. Which a lot of people that know me or see me perform and stuff, I do this for a living. They're always think I love being around people, and I'm always out there, and I'm really not. I enjoy being content by myself and chilling out and kind of being shy and tucked away, and then when I go on stage or have to do a show, it's like a switch flips, and I'm out there doing that thing. So that's something that a lot of people I think a lot of entertainers that way. A lot of people think they're always about loving to be in the spotlight, and I'm very much like, if I'm not on stage, I'm cool just being being shy and quiet.
Josh, thank you so much for coming on the Joy of Cruising podcast and providing the listeners with yet another perspective performing on cruise ships and performing nationally and internationally. All the best to you in your career. And as I like to say, we'll see you on the ocean.
Sounds good. Thanks for having me. Appreciate it.
The Joy of Cruising and Cruising Interrupted, each $16.99 plus shipping, and new release, The Joy of Cruising Again for $18.99, can be ordered at the link on thejoyofcruisingpodcast.com. For each of the 3 books, use the discount code Joy of Cruising Podcast and get $4 off. The Joy of Cruising books are also available at Amazon. Order the ebook at Amazon or your favorite online retailer. Stay in touch by joining the Joy of Cruising Podcast Facebook group or following the Joy of Cruising Podcast on Instagram. We're constantly adding new shows. Please leave a review and tell a friend about us. We hope you enjoyed this brief escape to the ocean. See you next week.